Welcome back, San Antonio Spurs fans. Today we're going to be doing a little bit of Pounding the Rock prospect talk with a very special guest today, former NBA agent and founder of Babcock Hoops, Matt Babcock. How are you doing, Matt?
Yeah, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for joining me today. It's going to be an exciting episode. Hopefully, Spurs fans have really fallen in love with Deni Avdija, and that's going to be the topic we're talking about. But before we get into it, go ahead and tell the viewers a little bit about your background in basketball and about yourself.
Yeah, sure. To try and make a long story short, so I grew up in a basketball family. My dad and two uncles have all worked in the NBA for a long time, since the late '70s. When I finished college, I started working in the sports agency business. I worked as an agent for 10 years. Decided I wanted to get out of that and kind of get back closer to my roots and do something a little bit more directly basketball related, and started doing some scouting, doing some media work. One thing led to another, and I launched Babcock Hoops a couple years ago. We do a number of things within basketball, but the main focus is NBA draft coverage.
Awesome, and that's exactly what we're talking about today. So we'll just go ahead and jump into it with Deni Avdija. So Deni is a guy who I am relatively high on in regards to like the talent available in this class. But to you, what makes Deni Avdija such an intriguing prospect? And can you kind of describe the level of competition he faced at Maccabi Tel Aviv for fans who aren't really familiar with that league?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that jumps out to me with Deni is versatility. I mean, he's got great size. He's 6'9". I just saw him in Atlanta a few weeks ago. Physically, it looks like he's really filling out well. From what I understand, he's got a great work ethic, and so I think his physical profile is really great. I mean, he's 6'9". He's probably going to end up being a guy when it's all said and done. Is probably somewhere around 230 or so. He can play the three, he can play the four. Handles the ball well. Great playmaker. And he's deceptively athletic. And so, I mean, he's a guy, you really could kind of use him in so many different ways, different, positional versatility. He plays hard, he defends. So I think he's got upside as a defender. Really just a guy, like I said, that's just extremely versatile.
Yeah, and then if you want to talk about a little bit about the competition he faced with Maccabi Tel Aviv,
Oh, right. Yeah. Sorry.
some fans aren't familiar with that league.
Right.
I watched him play in that league a lot this year, and his role changed from the beginning of the year where I think he was more off ball, kind of in the corner looking for a shot, and then towards when they were getting to the playoffs, they utilized him more on ball. So I would love to hear what you think about the competition that he.
Yeah, no, of course. Yeah, sorry, I forgot about your second part of your
Worries.
question. Maccabi Tel Aviv, it's the powerhouse in Israel. The top division of Israel is a good league by itself, but most importantly, it's in the Euro League. And so how it works with the Euro League is it's the top teams from throughout Europe that play cup games. It's similar to like the soccer style of competition, and so it's the best league in the world outside of the NBA. And so, I mean, Deni being an 18, 19-year-old, he's been playing with grown men that are serious pros. And so, I mean, him being productive at this level, at this young of age, very impressive to me.
Definitely, and I think that's one of the things that stands out to me is a lot of times we see these international prospects. They're touted for their talent and their potential, but they didn't actually spend all that much time playing with the first team or even in teams that were involved with the EuroLeague. And that's one of the things that I really do like about Deni is we know that he's competed with grown men. We know that he's played well. But for me, I have some questions about him. So what areas do you think he needs to improve in as he prepares for the NBA? Are there any concerns for you with Deni? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing with him, the swing skills is outside shooting. He's made some progress there. I actually have confidence that he's going to be a decent shooter when it's all said and done. I mean, I think his shooting mechanics are fine. I think it's more of a deal where he just needs to continue to learn the game, learn his spots. But let's keep in mind this is a young kid playing at a really high level. And so, I mean, I think as he naturally matures and his body fills out and he continues to get better, I think he's going to be able to learn to take better shots and knock them down at a better rate. Same thing goes with his free throw shooting. I think just shooting overall. I mean, that's the one thing that is certainly his swing skill of what's going to kind of determine, is this kid going to be a decent, good player, or is he big time? And I mean, if he's shooting the ball at a high level, the kid could end up being a really high level player.
Yeah, I kind of echo that sentiment to a certain degree. We did see him shoot, I think, in the mid 50s from the free throw line, but I think a lot of that is mental. That is really something that I don't think a lot of people realize is like when you're on the court, you're so young. They're high pressure situations. It can get to you, and it's definitely a mental game as much as it is a physical game at these high professional levels. And so, I think I have confidence in him being able to develop that 3-point shot. We did see him make progress there. When they came back from that COVID break, per se, he did raise his percentages immediately following. They kind of tapered off, but I think he's made good progress there. You can only take so much stock in all the workout videos. Everybody looks good in workout videos, but like you said, he has a pretty good work ethic, or it seems that he does. And I have confidence that he'll be able to shoot as well. So in terms of his shooting, I think that may come along, and that's, you're right, going to be a swing skill. But his defense, now I think he's a really solid team defender. I think he's a high basketball IQ kind of guy. He knows where to be. He's not lost on that end. But do you think individually as an isolation defender, he's going to have much versatility, or is it probably going to be someone who just guards threes and fours?
Yeah, I think he's for the most part probably going to guard threes and fours. But that's a good thing. I mean, I think he could legitimately defend two positions well. He's shown promise that he's going to end up developing physically. So I don't think lack of physical strength at the four is going to be an issue at all. And I think he's a good athlete. So I don't think it's a guy that he's vulnerable of facing more athletic perimeter players. I think he's a legitimate, versatile defender that could guard at least two positions. In some cases, maybe even three and four. I mean, some of these small ball lineups. It's not out of the question that Deni could guard, opposing teams five if they are playing extreme small ball. And then certain spots with two guards. I mean, it depends on who you're playing, what the matchup is. I don't see him being a guy like, say, last year, like the Hornets played Graham and Rozier as their backcourt. That might be a little bit of a disadvantage for Deni if he's having to guard a quick, smaller guard. But if you're talking about more of like a big 2-3, wing, I think he could guard a lot of those types of guys. But yeah, overall, I think defensively he's going to be pretty solid.
Yeah, and another thing that I really liked about him was he was a pretty good weak side rim protector. Like he came over and rotated, and he used verticality. Like he didn't commit a ton of fouls on the defensive end. He went straight up and down, got some, blocks in that situation. Is that something you think that will translate to the NBA? I know that he only has a 6'9" wingspan, and he's about 6'8", 6'9". Will he be? Do you think he can be effective in that area? Or do you think that just is something that may taper off a little bit in the NBA?
Yeah, I don't see him being a big time rim protector, but he does have good size. I mean, even though his wingspan is pretty even to his height, he's a big kid. So I mean, a 6'9" wingspan is not horrible, even though he's 6'9", tall. Yeah, I think he'll be just a good, solid overall versatile defender. I don't think he's going to be a real dynamic playmaker on that end of the ball. I think he's just going to be solid.
Awesome. So what role, when we're thinking of Deni as a rookie, what role do you think will best suit him coming into the NBA?
It just depends on the team. I could see him being a guy that can step in and play a pretty good role right away. And I think his versatility is going to give him a lot of opportunities as well, because a coach can justify playing him at two different positions. He's not really a liability on the defensive end guarding different players. It's probably going to allow him to get over the hump quicker, just because there's going to be more spots he could fill early on as he's developing and learning the game. And he really works hard. So I like his motor's there. So I do think he's going to be a guy that coaches will like and want to play early on. The biggest thing, going back to his swing skill of shooting the ball, if he's able to get in a spot where he's hitting shots at a decent rate early on, that could really raise his value quickly.
Definitely. And I wanted to talk a little bit about like a realistic ceiling. Now, I don't love one-for-one player comparisons because I think sometimes people just once you throw that out there, that's what they're going to think that player is, or may be. But we've seen guys' names like other European guys, like a Hato Turkoglu, someone who can be that, secondary initiator and, a primary initiator in some situations. Do you think he has the sort of court vision to be able to play a similar role near his peak, or is he somebody who is probably more of a role player?
No, I could see him being a guy that could be, I don't know necessarily you want to put the pressure on him to be a primary ball handler. I mean, one example I've used is, the last few years they've used Ben Simmons in Philly as a, quote unquote point guard, primary ball handler. I personally think they put too much pressure on him. You definitely want the ball in his hands and allow him to make plays. I think, you can put a guy into a secondary ball handling situation, allow him still to be a point forward. And actually, the Sixers did use Ben Simmons the second part of this last season in that way, and it works really well. if things really were to click for Deni, I could see him being in kind of that mold of a point forward that kind of swings between the 3 and the 4. But he is making plays with the ball in his hands. That's how I could see his role being, and I do think he's going to be more than just a complimentary player. I think at the least he's going to be a good starter. And like I said, with the shooting, if he develops there, he could end up being a really good player.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you there. I think he's a really exciting prospect. He's somebody who has a lot of different skill sets. And even though right now he may be more of a jack of all trades than a master of any of them, I think that's actually a good thing to have a well rounded game, especially coming into a league like the NBA where versatility is just such a useful skill. We see a lot of players. And I think not necessarily a one-for-one comparison again, but like a Nicholas Batum kind of guy who played really good defense, who can kind of distribute a little bit, kind of shoot a little bit. I think there's a lot of room in the NBA for those types of players. So we'll enter the kind of closing questions I have for you. So, like I said earlier, Spurs fans are absolutely in love with Deni Avdija. They've been, kind of on this Deni train all season, but we've seen his stock rise from, low lottery level to now he could be very well going top 3, top 5 in this draft. And as we know, the San Antonio Spurs have the 11th pick in this draft. So he's definitely out of their range if they stay put. Now, I'm not the biggest advocate for trading up in this class, but do you think that it would behoove the San Antonio Spurs to look into trading up to acquire Deni Avdija? And if you do, why?
Yeah, I definitely think it's worthwhile to kind of sniff around on. I mean, I've got my first tier of guys, not necessarily in this order, but Anthony Edwards, James Wiseman, LaMelo Ball, Obi Toppin, Deni Avdija, and Onyeka Okongwu. That's the first 6, and I think it's pretty close as far as their market values go. All the players are very different, and it's really made this year tricky as far as projecting these picks because it's just I think if you were to do a big board, that big board would be very different for each team depending on their priorities and how they want to play. And so, I mean, I think there's a number of guys in that group. I would be interested in checking on and seeing the availability of those picks for the Spurs to move up. It all comes down to how much would it cost them? And they do have a lot of young pieces that are still developing. So I mean, it's definitely worth stepping around and seeing what's there. Because I do like these players, even though there isn't like a clear-cut superstar in this draft.
Mhm.
That first 5 or 6 guys, we could end up looking at a decent amount of them, panning out.
Definitely. I mean, I like Devin Vassell. I like Killian Hayes. I like Onyeka Okongwu. I like Anthony Edwards just based on his scoring potential. I think the feel is lacking a little bit there, but he's a young guy. All of these guys, I think, is important to remember. They're all really young. Even Obi Toppin, who's 23, by most standards, he is still really young. Like in any other profession, we would be saying that guy is so young. So I think they all have a ton of room to grow. And there are some guys that probably fit the Spurs needs. And I think what they're looking to do is probably stay competitive because, Popovich is 71 years old, turning 72 years old this next season. And they kind of owe it to him to stay competitive. And I think that's what we're going to see them do is they're probably going to take a player who is going to be able to step in day one. And maybe they don't impact winning in a real serious way that, they carry you to some sort of playoff run, but they're going to probably look for someone who can contribute right off the bat and hope to, at least make a push for the 7th or 8th seed. So the last thing I will ask you is if you had to put your GM hat on, who would you pick in a realistic range for the San Antonio Spurs at 11? Who would be someone who you think would be a good fit for them, or not even necessarily a good fit, but a good pick for them?
Yeah, so I mean the Spurs, obviously this, just as well as I do or better. They're all about continuity. They don't give up on their guys very quickly, and they've got a nice young nucleus of perimeter players. I mean, they've committed a bunch of money into Murray, Derek White, Lonnie Walker. They drafted Keldon Johnson, and so I mean I think if they're one to kind of stick with the development and ride it through with their picks, it probably would make sense to address their front court, either the 3, 4, or 5. And so a big part of that is who's going to be there at 11, and a lot of that there's a lot of uncertainty there. Some guys that I've looked at as potential options for the Spurs, taking all of that into consideration. Patrick Williams from Florida State, he's sort of like a modern stretch 4, young guy that's more of an upside type player. He would fit the Spurs long term. Isaiah Stewart from Washington, undersized 5. It's a little bit on his high side, I think, market value wise, but he definitely fits the Spurs culture. I mean, this kid's a worker, high character, just overachiever type. Zeke Naji from Arizona is another guy that falls in that category. I think this is extremely on his high side, But the Spurs, I don't think they really care about that kind of stuff. They want to get people in the building that fit the way they like to operate. Those are just a few names that come to mind that kind of fit with what they're building, and just how they like to operate.
Definitely, in terms of Najee and Stewart, I kind of agree with you there. That would be a little bit of a reach at 11, but we saw them do a similar thing with Luka Šamanić last year. Luka Šamanić was early second rounder, late first round grade kind of guy for most people, and he ended up going 19. And I think if the Spurs had to do it again, they probably would. They drafted him for upside. So I could also see them going for an upside guy in Patrick Williams. In fact, a lot of mock drafts right now have him slated to go to the Spurs. It kind of makes sense. He fits a positional need, and he's someone who has a good amount of upside. He's a very good fit for the modern NBA. He has some shooting potential. He has some defensive versatility, and he's the second youngest prospect in this draft. I want to say he just turned 19 maybe a few months ago. So he is incredibly young. But those are all really, I think, good options for the San Antonio Spurs. Like I said, I don't know if I would reach at 11, but if that's those two guys who you mentioned, Najee and Marshall, if those are their guys, you might want to trade down, and I think that could be a viable option as well. But those are all the questions I had for you in terms of Deni Avdija. I appreciate you taking some time to talk to me. I loved hearing everything you had to say. It's good to get some insight from somebody who has some experience, some real experience in the NBA world and the prospect world. So again, thank you for joining me here, and this is your time to shine. So if you have anything to shout out, anything you want to tell people you're working on, just go for it.
Yeah, thanks. First of all, thanks for having me. I enjoyed talking with you. And yeah, you can follow our stuff. I'm kind of all over the place. So I run and operate BabcockHoops.com, and we do a bunch of different draft coverage. I'm also working with BasketballNews.com, which is a new outlet. It's got a lot of former players and current players providing content. I do draft coverage for them as well, and also CBS Sports HQ. And so kind of all over the place, but yeah, check us out at all the different outlets.
Definitely check out Matt's work. He's doing some great work, and he has been doing some great work for some time now. Thank you one last time for showing up and talking to me, and take care.
Thanks, you too.
So there you have it, San Antonio Spurs fans. That was some Pounding the Rock prospect talk. Quick fire questions with Matt Babcock on Deni Avdija, one of the brightest prospects in the 2020 NBA draft class. Now, I don't know if the Spurs are going to, try to trade up and go get him. I don't know if he will fall. I highly doubt that he will fall, but he is definitely an intriguing prospect. I hope y'all learned a little bit about Deni. But as always, thanks for tuning in. Do not forget to like, subscribe, leave me a comment. What am I doing well? What do you want to see next time? Because this channel is as much for me as it is for y'all. And I hope to see y'all next time.